Okay, today we're going to talk about the Tavor and kind of origins of the design as I can best tell. A lot of times I'll hear people talk about the Tavor as kind of like as a bullpup AK or a Galil. But in my opinion, the Tavor is more like a Desert Eagle in bullpup form. And we're going to kind of go through, I'm going to show you some of the different parts and why I think that. And there is some influence from the Galil and other versions of the Galil in the Tavor, but I think it's mostly with the Desert Eagle. Okay, so the first area I'm going to compare is the bolt carriers. More so the bolt than the bolt carrier itself. Here you can see on the Galil, you have this large diameter gas piston. Desert Eagle, you have a much smaller gas piston, which I think is a lot more similar to how the Tavor gas piston is. You also see the way the bolt is limited to not rotate on the Galil is there's a flat surface here, so it's hard to rotate it, and then there's a cam in the trunnion that pushes it over to rotate it. Whereas on the Tavor, you have this rod here that comes through, and when it's compressed, it's kind of hard to do here. You can't rotate the bolt. As soon as it clears, then you can rotate the bolt. You see the exact same system basically on the Desert Eagle here. Here we have the rod. Let me grab a pointy stick. Here you have the rod here. You see right now it's forward. The bolt won't rotate. If I push that in, now the bolt will rotate. Okay, next I'm going to look at how the bolts are cammed or rotated. So you see here, the way it rotates and the way it's retained is you have this cam profile milled in the bolt carrier and then a lug on the bolt. On the Tavor, here you see something different. You actually see the cam profile is milled on the bolt itself, and the pin stays fixed right in here. You see the exact same design on the Desert Eagle. Move that out of the way. So here you have the cam pin. Oops. That's what rotates it. The cam pin stays fixed in the Desert Eagle. So you kind of take a look at the bolts together. See a lot of similarities. You kind of have the weird asymmetrical lugs. This is a newer dual ejector, but the original ones just had a single ejector. Extractor, looks pretty much the same. You kind of have the same lobe on it. Then another area of similarity, maybe a little less obvious, is the barrel lock right here. I have one pulled out right here. So you have basically a half round thing and it rotates into the barrel to lock it. On the Desert Eagle, kind of a similar thing. You have this half round. You can see it well. So there it is locked. There it is unlocked. Kind of similar. So there's probably some inspiration there. Next thing we're going to look at is kind of the barrel and how the gas system works. So it's hard to see on this because it's kind of like I believe it's a two-piece assembly. I think you can see a seam here, but it's hard to see. But the gas port on the Desert Eagle is actually really close to the chamber. It's right here, and you actually have a gas tube that comes down and then into here. It's really hard to see. If you look at, I'll see if I can find a cutaway. You probably can't see down the barrel very well, but you won't see a gas piston in this area, or sorry, a gas port. You should see one closer to the chamber, but it's going to be really hard to see. You might be able to see it there. Here's a barrel assembly from an X95, exact same as the Tavor. Here you have the gas port here, and it comes up and it actually feeds into this tube before it reaches the piston, much like a Desert Eagle, except it's reversed. Instead of going from the chamber forward, it's coming forward back closer to the piston assembly. The Galil, as you're probably familiar with, the gas piston comes all the way up right here. Very short gas path has to travel to reach to the piston. Now, a couple areas I think were inspired from the Galil and AK series. So you do have this gas tube that connects between where the piston goes and the back where the receiver is. On the Tavor, I should have disassembled one more, but you have a similar thing. There's a metal tube in here with, it's like a plastic covered metal tube. It's kind of similar in some ways. And then the other thing you see, not unique to AKs, but you have the recoil spring basically as part of the piston extension, which is what the same you see on here. The recoil spring travels down that piston extension, where the Desert Eagle, you have these dual recoil springs that sits below the slide, like so. Then there is another Galil variant, known as the Magal, and this is in 30 carbine. And basically it's a micro Galil and a polymer chassis, and you see the same kind of polymer chassis idea on the Tavor series. Basically you have a metal receiver in here, then you have a giant polymer chassis, and also you can see the Cutlass style trigger guard that the Tavor also has. Now, chronologically, it makes sense that the Desert Eagle is more of an ancestor of the Tavor. The Desert Eagle is designed by an American, Bernard White, I believe, and he contracted with IMI in Israel to finish the design and produce them. So you'll see a lot of the early Desert Eagles were made by IMI and later IWI when it was privatized. So you see that coming around, kind of marketed, designed in the mid-80s. The Galil obviously was before that, more like in the 70s. You know, predated even more by like the Finnish Valmet, stuff like that. And then the Magal, you see, it's basically a modified Galil. That was done mid-90s, about the same time you see the Tavor coming around. So you see IWI started kind of favoring the polymer chassis with the metal inside, and you see that design continued on the X95 and the Tavor 7 and the Caramel. So my opinion, the Desert Eagle is the father of Tavor, not the AK. So you could look at it as, what if you bullpupped a Desert Eagle? This is what you would get. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or comments, I don't claim to be an expert about everything, so I could be wrong. I'd love to see more information about the development of the Tavor and such like that, but the information is pretty scarce. All right, thanks.